Thank you, Linda. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to CP3 Land Use Committee meeting for Tuesday, April 19, 2022. My name is Jackie Wong. I'm the chair of this committee, conducting the meeting through Zoom, and our vice chairperson, Linda, is managing the platform tonight. She's going to give a brief about some Zoom features and some guidelines. Linda.
Okay. Well, the main guideline I wish to give, as always, is you may use the chat to put your name in so that we know you were here if you're not a member of the committee. Otherwise, do not use the chat. If you do, I have to turn it off. And if you if you're on the committee, you will have the first opportunity to speak. And when the committee is done, the rest of the audience can speak. Please raise your hand if you wish to speak. Okay.
Thank you, Linda.
You're welcome.
That's perfect. Lisa, can you take attendance, please?
Yes, I can. Hold on just a second. Let me get the minutes up. Jackie, I take it you're present.
Yes, thank you.
Linda Jones.
I'm here.
Yeah, thought so. Jonathan Chu. Herman Hewitt. Trevor Holland.
He's out of town.
Okay. Lisa is present. Olympia.
Present.
Thank you, ma'am. Michael Perlis.
I believe he's also out of town. If I remember correctly, I think he sent me email about that.
Okay. Damaris Reyes.
I'm here.
Thank you, Damaris.
Thank you.
Anisha Stephen.
Here.
Dominic Berg.
Here.
And Steve Herrick. Thank you. That's the attendance.
Thank you, Lisa. And our first item on the agenda is to approve the minutes for our March meetings. Let me know if anyone have problems or we just approve it. Okay, no questions. The minutes are approved. Our second item on the agenda is to discuss the oversupply of hotel rooms and also the low utilization rate of state program to convert hotels to housing. Tonight we have Mr. Vijay Penny. I hope I said it correctly. Mr. Vijay is from the Hotel Association of New York City. He's going to give us an overview of the situation. I have attended a forum where Mr. Penny was one of the speakers, and they have some really great data. Vijay?
Well, thank you, Jackie. You got my name totally correctly. I'm pleased to be here. I'm happy to answer questions after I give the brief overview that you would like. So let me start by saying where the industry is with regard to revenues. That's somewhat germane to the issue of Honda, which I think is what is of interest to the community board. The revenues are still about 25 to 30% below 2019. And when you compare that to 2 years, rather when you add 2 years of negative growth, essentially, so there's a cumulative effect that has resulted in over 100 hotels that remain closed. So that's the headline bad news, if you will. But the news, however, in terms of going forward is looking better. We've survived Omicron, which really put a brake on the revival that we were seeing, or beginning to see, I should say, in November. And so we're seeing occupancies now in the 70s. Let's remember, though, that hotel occupancies in New York City, particularly Manhattan, used to reach 90% on average, 89 to 90%. No other city in the country had that level of occupancy. So, but that spurred a lot of construction. And in a 20-year span, starting from 2001 to roughly 2019, lots of hotels were built, particularly in the M1 zones, the manufacturing zones. And that's not limited to Manhattan. You had Long Island, parts of Brooklyn as well. And so these are largely new stock. that have been, that by the way are mostly non-union hotels, but nevertheless they were significantly affected because the market when it started to revive did not reach the kind of clientele that these hotels are used to. So there are roughly about 215 hotels were built in that period. There are totally about 700 hotels in Manhattan. The overwhelming majority of hotel rooms, not hotels, are unionized hotels. Every large hotel, virtually every large hotel is a union hotel. But that said, as I said, there's still about 100 hotels that are closed, and we still have some headwinds. The US remains the only country in the developed world where you need a test to come back within the country, although that might be lifted at the end of this month is what I heard as early as this, as recently as today. So, and business travel hasn't come back. Convention business is a far distance from where it was. And so the rate, as I said earlier, is down 25-30%. So because of the plight of the industry, let me back up a bit and just say one little thing that may be of interest to the community board people here on today, which is that when occupancy went down so terribly in 2020, we pivoted as an industry a significant portion of the hotels into accommodating people who are homeless shelters. So roughly, I think it was 85 hotels that participated in it, out of a total of, let's remember, 700. The total room count there was about 18,000 rooms out of nearly 120,000 rooms that were devoted to this project, if you will. That ended in December of last year, December 31st to be precise. We in the Hotel Association actually enabled that contract, facilitated that contract, totally pro bono, because that's what we do. We try to go to bat for the hotel community. So back today as to where we are, and once we see a revival, it's going to be more and more difficult for utilizing the Honda finances that were set aside. So let me just elaborate a little bit on that, if it's not already clear to everybody. Honda came about, I believe it was last year in August or September, and it essentially set aside $100 million for nonprofits to convert hotels into other uses. Now, there are several problems with converting a hotel into other uses. Not that it cannot be done, but the first issue that pops up is zoning. As I just said earlier, nearly 220 or 215 to be exact hotels were built in the M1 zones. The M1 zones really are not residential zones, as the name would indicate, and so therefore you can't put it to residential use. So that's one hurdle that can be overcome, but it's a hurdle nevertheless. The FAR caps for residential buildings are quite different to that for a hotel. They're limited, they're lower, and so therefore, what do you do with a hotel that that was built using the FAR caps available to hotels? Rear yard limitations for a building is 30 yards, for a hotel is 20 yards. So how do you allow for that? You literally have to shrink the building to comply with the residential requirements. The other big factor, and there are a few more, is federal standards for accessibility override any state standards. So let's say the Honda bill allowed for this and it went forward. Any building that converted to this would have to comply with federal ADA standards. So that is kind of difficult because the requirement for ADA for residential is more stringent than that for hotels. Hotels do have stringent requirements, but it's a set number of rooms per inventory of the hotel. And the accessibility numbers are slightly different even in terms of the width of the doors, etc. So that has to be adjusted. The first point I raise as an issue, as a problematic issue, if you will, with converting hotels is the zoning issue. So you can get around it by using ULUP, uniform. I'm sure everybody in this meeting is aware of that, but it's cumbersome, it's long drawn, and as the more time that goes by, it's going to be more difficult to convert these hotels because opportunities will start to emerge again for hotel owners to reopen their hotels should they be so inclined. So, and hotel owners is really a fungible term because while some owners may go out of business, somebody else is likely to buy the hotel and and the hotel continues as a hotel, subject to the stock being reasonably in good shape. So those are broadly some of the issues that has limited the use of the Honda funding availability. I was told that the state actually is prepared to put more money in it than the 100 million, but the fact of the matter is only one applicant has been there, one nonprofit, and this has to be a nonprofit that uses these funds and converts these buildings, assuming the ownership is willing to sell. One other quick point, which is that the stack of a hotel, meaning the plumbing stack, the electrical stacks, those are all quite different to that of a residential building. The Honda bill, in fact, envisages a kitchenette or something like that in each of these apartments. So most hotels don't have that. So yes, you can add that on, but because of the stacks and the way they run, it's a little more difficult to make that adjustment more costly. And so that's another sort of inhibitor, if you will. So as a result, we are seeing not a whole lot of interest in this as yet. There's certainly hotel owners are keeping that powder dry to the extent they're still in control of their properties to see if the market revives. And we are seeing a revival this year. We don't expect the city's hotel industry to come back to 2019 levels before 2024, but we are heading in that direction. We're already, I'm happy to share some numbers for folks that want to listen on this. For instance, we ended 2020 with an occupancy of 47%. We ended 2021 with 59%. We expect to end 2022 with 76%. That's our forecast. And next year, 2023, with 83%. So still way below what it was in 2019. And that's only occupancy rate is also critically important. So, but we are trending in the right direction, hoping that, we don't see any other, a 3 Sigma or even 6 Sigma event that comes in the way. So that's a broad overview. I'm happy to take questions on any of what I just said, either with regard to Honda or the industry itself.
Thank you, Vijay, for giving us an overview about the situation. I have a couple of questions. So you mentioned about like all these obstacles stopping hotels from using Honda, like such as the M1 zoning or FAR limitation and rear yard setback, also ADA access and everything. So would you suggest like what kind of policy change the city or state can take to make that process easier? And also, you also mentioned that the plumbing and electrical change for a residential unit is different from hotels. So what about if you just converting to SRO? Would that be easier? So basically, I have 2 questions.
Well, let me answer the second one first. So some hotels, I shouldn't say many, were former SROs. The process of converting SROs into regular hotels started somewhere in the late 80s, more like early 90s. So one hotel in particular that was an SRO is now going back to affordable housing, and that's 161 Lexington Avenue, 30th and Lexington. But that's because it was clearly an SRO in the past. So it is possible to convert to an SRO, but even SRO has some structural differences to that of a hotel. But let me answer the first question, what can they do to change it? In the first iteration of this Honda bill, before it became an act, they did sort of see if there's a way to overcome some of the zoning limitations. However, the city didn't agree to that because it's typically a city matter and not a state matter. So there needs to be a joint effort, if you will, between the city and the state to overcome these zoning issues, meaning that let the state in its law pass something that says you can do a residential thing in, let's say, a commercial district, because most hotels were in the commercial district before the flurry of hotels that came up in M1. So there are a couple of hotels, a few hotels in the commercial district area, which would need either a ULURP process or something else to, let's say, an act that overrides this prohibition of building something residential and commercial. Of course, community boards are going to get involved in this. And so it depends where this hotel is or any hotels are. So those are some of the issues that need to be considered. But timing is critical. like I said, as we start going through this year, it's going to be more and more difficult to find willing hotel owners who are either presently owners or future owners. They are opportunistic buyers looking to enter the marketplace. Quite a few hotels are sold at 50% and sometimes more discounts to what they were purchased for merely 4 or 5 years ago. So these opportunistic buyers, this is the nature of the real estate market when it's in the city. Nothing as dramatic as what we saw in 2020 in the past, but assets in hands.
I was told our council member, Carolina Rivera, is introducing a bill to facilitate the hotel to be converted to housing. However, I mean, I heard about it yesterday, but I didn't have a chance to look into the bill. So I'm just wondering if you have any information about that.
No, unfortunately, I do not. What exactly was the council member looking to do?
I was told by another council member about her plan to introduce a bill to facilitate that conversion. However, I don't have the details. That's why I'm just.
I mean, it's very possible because, like I said, these obstacles are nothing that are secret. It's those that are in the industry, so to speak, both in the nonprofit and the hotel industry are aware of these obstacles. So legislation is most welcome because the need to move is quick. Clearly, affordable housing, the solution is to build more affordable housing. And so if the price can be met, then with legislation that is amenable to this, then it's all for a good cause.
Okay, great. And I have a last question. So since last November, the City Council adopted new regulations that a new hotel required permits to build. And the community board also, this community board also supported that legislation. So do you know how does it work now? And how does the community can weigh in the process, in the practical level?
So it's very recent, Jackie. It just took effect basically this year, 3 months ago. So we have not seen any permit that's being pulled. As I said already, there's been a surfeit of hotels, a surplus, tons of hotels that came online in the last 20 years. So between 2000, here's a good, it's a dependable statistic. Between 2007 and 2019, there was a 75% increase in hotel rooms in the city of New York. That's just massive. While the tourism boom was all clearly there, the supply far exceeded the demand. So the special permit essentially gives community boards like yours and local city council members greater power in deciding if a particular project is, it makes the most sense for that location where it is. And so it is for sure going to cause delays, if you will, if you're looking at it purely from a developer standpoint, but the purpose was to make thoughtful regulations for building of hotels.
Thank you, Vijay. Other committee members, Olympia.
Okay, thank you. So I had a few questions because it's not clear to me. Do you have any statistics about our district? Because I'm assuming that even though, as you said, it used to be 90% occupation at Manhattan, and this is above the average with other cities. A lot of tourism is returning already, even though COVID is still here. So I'm wondering whether you have any statistics about our district, its performance in terms of occupancy.
You're talking now or in the past?
Yeah, now, because the thing is, I understand people want to convert, but the reality is this pandemic is becoming endemic, and definitely the economy is pushing for a full reopening as soon as possible. So I wouldn't be surprised. I literally am seeing this week so many tourists in the city. And so I just want to understand if you have observed, something in our district in terms of return.
Yeah, your district, Chinatown, Lower East Side, Lower East Side has a few hotels. Those are doing well, actually. And they're not far behind the overall city statistic, particularly Manhattan statistics. So they're seeing the same revival. But that said, it's the upper scale hotels that are doing better than the mid-market hotels right now. But it's a question of time before that also catches up. But again, this is tourism, remember, not business travel has not returned. So the rate is still significantly lower, and lower Manhattan, which is your district for the most part, that business travel has not come back as yet.
Mm-hmm. And if I understood correctly, you represent the union of hotels, right?
We represent mostly hotels that are union, but we have, close to 30% of our membership is non-union. So again, I think I touched upon it earlier. The majority of hotels, overwhelming majority of hotel rooms are union hotels, but the majority of hotels are non-union hotels. And why is that so? It's because many of the smaller hotels, 100 rooms, 150 rooms that came up post 2000, particularly in the manufacturing district, those remain at this point non-union hotels, but the room count is smaller.
But the reason I was asking is because, with the return of the tourism, people are hoping that some jobs will return. And when we convert hotels to housing, on one hand, we're addressing the issue of housing, but I'm assuming a lot of people would be losing their jobs. Is this something that you have studied?
No, firstly, the Honda bill explicitly says if it's a union hotel that's looking to convert, you need, there's something called the collective bargaining agreement, and that basically binds the ownership / management to a contract with the union. And so if that particular hotel is looking to convert, the CBA is invoked, and the union has to be okay with it. And so we don't see jobs going as a result of that. Let's remember though that, occupancy is still not back. And so some of the union employees are still not back. Many are coming back, but not all, so as yet.
Thank you.
Sure.
Questions from other committee members or public? Seeing none. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Padapani. Thank you so much for joining us with and sharing such a great information. Thank you.
Have a good evening, everybody. Thank you.
Bye. Okay, and so our let me see. So our next item is the green questionnaire. Is Maya with us tonight? Let me see. No. Thank you, Dominic. So Maya is near the end of her time, and we need to finalize the green questionnaire tonight. And she has created a Google form and also a workbook of the sustainability, resilience, and also the updated housing questionnaire. Dominic has sent the questionnaire and the workbook to you earlier today. So Dominic, do you want to give a presentation, or what do you want to do?
Yeah, I would. And I can do a fairly quick demo of the form as well. So let me...
Should I make you a co-host? So
yeah, can you do that, please?
Share your screen, absolutely.
Thanks.
There it goes. Oops, hit the wrong person. Try that again. Oh, this alphabetical order jumps around. Oh, I see. Okay. There you go.
Okay. All right. You're now the co-host. Share screen. Okay, let me just find the form. Okay. Sorry, let me just make it bigger on my end here. Uh-oh. Oh, shoot. Hold on one sec. Okay. Can you see my screen? The Safari,
Yes.
The questionnaire? Okay. So before I do a fairly quick demo, I just want to say that first of all, Maya has been really great in pulling all of this together. She has her class on the same night as our meetings, so that's why she hasn't been able to present herself. She does have, I think, like maybe I don't know, 5 days left. So if there's anything that comes up, like little things that come up, she may be able to work on them in that time. But otherwise, I should be able to do it. I know how to work with the Google form, and I have the Word document, and I believe that this will be, a living questionnaire anyway, especially as we use it a few times with developers. So, you know, I can always make edits. So nothing is really cemented here. So a couple of challenges, I know we talked about, you know, the ability to do branching on the form in the last meeting. And unfortunately, once we started to try to, you know, I should say, once Maya started to try to do a lot of that, it got very complicated, and we decided that we should really just try to keep the branching of questions to a minimum, and so that maintenance wise it's easier for people in the future. The key thing is that while this is a you know, it's the Green Development Housing Questionnaire, all developments will answer the green and resiliency questions first, and then they get to a point where they're asked if there's housing, and if there is no housing, they click no, and then the next button is to submit the form with the green and resiliency questions already filled out. So it ends there for them. We got some additional questions from Jackie and Lisa had also provided some suggestions for cleaning up the housing form. So those have been incorporated both into the Word document version of this form, as well as in this Google form here as well. So I know, I think the email I sent earlier, I said that there had only been minor updates to the Word document, and I was forgetting that those had actually been incorporated since the last time that you saw it. So those are in that Word document as well. Okay, so let me just quickly sort of give you a feel for, you know, what this form is about. You know, it has the intro, like is on the current application. We ask people to include copies of the following documents via email 5 business days prior to the meeting. And I see here it should say or bring them to the meeting, so I'll update that. My only question about that is, Jackie, if people are bringing these items to the meeting, do they need to bring copies for every committee member, or is the idea that they would be presented, you know, through like a projector or something like that?
In the past, it had been done like both ways, right? Like some developers brought in a stack of materials and distribute to members, in addition to a projector presentation. So I think right now, I mean, if they can send us electronic versions, I will be okay with it.
Okay, so electronic versions, and then those be forwarded to the committee members. Okay, all right. So maybe this should just then say include electronic copies of the following documents 5 business days prior to the meeting.
Yeah.
And okay, all right. And then we also note that not every question is applicable. And this is something that we talked about also in terms of the length of the questionnaire. People are able to, you know, the only required fields are the ones you're going to see right up front. Everything else is optional. But of course, we, you know, want to understand why someone is writing NA. Just briefly explain why it's not applicable. Like NA, building's not in a floodplain. So, and that's an example of like where the branching was going to get way too complicated. Like if the building's not in a floodplain, then you don't get certain questions. You know, it was just very difficult for Maya to do that, unfortunately. So, okay, I'm going to. Oh no, I'm just going to do acme.com. And then I've already filled this in, the development company name. I just said Acme, email address, acme.com, phone number, yada, yada, yada. So This then allows me to go to the start of all the questions. So because we weren't able to do the branching, what we did do was try to, at least for the user experience, not to feel like there's just this like one long forever form. We sectioned it into the sections that are on the Word document for the questionnaire. So you have the green development certifications where people would check which certifications they have, and then they would describe here what their score is for each certification. And then they would move on to answering the resilient communities questions. And these have all been set up, most of them are set up so that there can be long answers provided. Some of them are just short answers. So that's something we can control through the Google form, so we don't get just, you know, tons of long-winded answers. So someone would answer all of the resiliency related questions. Then they would move to, you know, some of the other sections, community relations, for example, promoting public health and a clean and safe environment questions, and then good green neighbors questions. So as as you see, I'm nothing's required. I'm just cruising through here. And some pages, are a little bit longer than others because depending on the questions for each section. I just want to now get to, then there's the other, this is the end of the green development and resiliency section. So, they can put notes here. Just to explain, we were thinking that people should be able to, upload those documents that we asked them to bring to the meeting through the questionnaire. However, Google only allows like a maximum of 1 gigabyte. And I would imagine that those files that they're sharing are going to be very large files. And I don't know how many files. So that's another thing that Google want to know, is it like 1 file, 5 files, or 10 files that you want to allow. So it's just easier to have them mail them than have them upload them here. Okay, so next here, does your development include any type of housing? So if I said no, then I would go here and I would just click submit, but it does. So I go back, yes. And then I go through the housing questionnaire and checklist. You'll see, in the housing questionnaire, there's some tables that you can't replicate in a Google form. So we just ask people, to list out the information in this way. Clearly that would be like a long answer. The project description. And then this is where, there are new questions that Lisa and Jackie had asked for that, that were sprinkled throughout this section. So, and let me just show one other thing. So this is an example where this table, we can't replicate this in the form. So what we decided to do is just have them, gave them kind of like the format for how we want them to fill out this table, and they would use this format in the answer here. So hopefully that's, that's one thing that we'll have to see if the developers do it correctly. And if not, then we may have to figure out, some other approach to that. So just go through. There are 20 pages total if there is housing involved. I think it's 11 if there's no housing. And then you'd get to the end and you would submit the file, the whole survey. And then they have an option also to go back and edit their response. So let's say they forgot something or they didn't have all the answers, at the time, they're able to go back into their form and update it, which is an advantage over the Word document version. So one other thing is, I know we talked about retrofit questions. Maya had a hard time without being directed at exactly which questions there's a difference between retrofit or not, and felt that a lot of them really were still applicable to retrofit. So so that's something where if Steve wants to, because he was one that raised it last time, if he wants to provide some more direction on that, I'm happy to look at how we could update the form a little bit more. So that's it.
Thank you, Dominic. Questions from the committee? Let me see, I cannot. Any questions from the committee members? And Dominic, so I gave you the last question, number 20, is my question I put in. And so I asked for rate of return and also pro forma financial statements, because I feel like we need those information to ask for things or concessions from developers. But I'm also not sure if I'm going overboard to ask for such materials. What do you think?
You're asking the committee or me?
You and the committee members. I mean, if the committee members has comments.
I think, my personal opinion is you may as well ask for it. They may say, we can't share that for one reason or another, but I would think you should ask for it.
Other committee members, do you guys have questions or comments about this green questionnaires and housing questionnaire? Primaris, you have a thumbs up or a question?
Thumbs up, meaning I agree with the last comment. And I wanted to also say that you've done a great job with this, Dominic. Thank you for all your work.
Dominic.
Thanks, Damaris. And I'll definitely pass that on to Maya as well. And again, thanks for your input early on as well. And others as well.
Linda, Olympia, thank you. So why don't we take a vote on this? Does anyone want the motion to adopt this green and / housing questionnaire?
I move that we accept this green and housing questionnaire.
Thank you, Linda. Anyone second?
I second, Damaris.
Thank you, Damaris. So we're gonna take a vote later with the adjourn vote and roll calling. Great. Thank you. Let me see. I think that's all for our meeting tonight. We can vote for adjourn.
What the heck is going on here, Jackie?
I don't know, Damaris. We just finished it by 7:15.
It's not even 7:15. I think this is a record.
I know. It just went by pretty fast, and it's very effective and efficient.
I
Thank you,
think
everyone.
because Dominic and Maya have done such a wonderful job, and we had big discussion about it at the last meeting. So it's not as if we're just passing this without discussion. It looks great.
Thank you, Dominic. And also Dominic and Maya did a lot of background work for sure. That saved us our time. So I really appreciate that. Otherwise, we might have to spend like a lot of times again tonight. And Paul.
Congratulations. I clearly have some effect on these meetings going, what, 35, 40 minutes? Look at that. I just signed on. Oh, good job.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you.
Paul got jokes.
Okay, so Lisa, can you do the roll calling? That would be the vote to adjourn, and also the vote for the green and housing questionnaire.
Okay, Jackie, how do you vote?
Yes.
Linda?
Yes.
Jonathan, Chu, are you here? Herman Hewitt, are you here? I take it Trevor is still not here because he's away. Lisa votes yes. Olympia, how do you vote?
Yes.
Michael, I think, has not returned. Am I correct?
Correct.
Okay, Damaris, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
I thought so. And Anisha
Yes.
and Dominic
Yes.
and Steve, have you appeared? Okay, thank you. That's
Thank you all.
it.
Thank you. Thank you. The full board meeting is still on Zoom. I think we have, if I remember correctly, they extended the open meeting law for 60 days, which means that I think even through, we are going to have the meeting through Zoom through June, I believe. But if there's any change, I'll let everybody know.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Good
Thanks,
night.
Jackie. Have a good one.
Thanks,
Thank you all.
everyone.
Thank you, Damaris. Thank you. Thank you, Olympia. Good night. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.